Keep your head up.
Ukraine calls them their wounded warriors, and Oleg is among their ranks, injured fighting for his country in Bakhmut, the Eastern Front. Now he's facing another battle to regain his strength and sense of identity.
There were a lot of drones flying over my position, and one dropped a grenade directly into my trench. And since we had a lot of ammunition, it detonated, and there was a wave of explosions, wounding my legs. I put the tourniquets on, but we were under constant fire. I had to wait 10 hours to be evacuated.
Once he was out, Oleg was told the rest of his life would be in a wheelchair. Prosthetic limbs and rehabilitation are hard to come by in a country still in the grip of war. But here, at a clinic in Maryland in the United States, at least 40 Ukrainian soldiers have found hope and healing through charitable donations.
Let's go. It's very hard work, but I can do it.
The first time that you were able to put legs on, what was that feeling like?
Мої відчуття були такі, наприклад, як It felt like when you haven't eaten for a long time and then finally you have food. It was a huge joy. I was on top of the world.
And that's why Mike Corcoran does it. For decades, he helped countless US soldiers wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan to walk again. But even he couldn't fathom what he saw in Ukraine.
The numbers we are told are 50 times the number that the United States suffered in 20 years of war. So the war's not letting up. So we were told there's about 100,000 amputees. When I was last in Kyiv, we went to one of the hospitals and it was just full of combat injuries. They couldn't take care of their own civilian patient population. The military had taken over the hospital, and it's just staggering, the numbers.
So staggering that Western military surgeons say they haven't seen injuries on this scale since World War II, meaning Ukraine will have to adapt to meet the needs of their war wounded. This is one way. Mike met Anatoly after he was also injured in eastern Ukraine. Today he uses a prosthetic leg, and now he's learning to make them. Together they'll open a new treatment center, like this one in the US, but back in Kyiv.
I will be able to help my brother so much. My brothers now without leg, without arms, unfortunately. But will be my small part to help them.
Among that band of brothers, 23-year-old Vladislav, the youngest to be treated here. His physical therapist says his sheer grit and determination means the progress he made in just weeks would usually take a year. And now he's headed home.
Я відчуваю, не знаю, як описати цю емоцію.
I don't know how to describe this emotion. Some kind of elation. To live a full life as a normal person. And maybe I can even serve again in another branch and be helpful.
I'm going to the right.
And so he'll return back to the country he defended to stand proudly on Ukrainian soil once again.
Helena Humphrey filed that report. She joins me now in studio. Helena, we saw there Ukraine facing this big challenge now in terms of looking after those who have suffered life-changing injuries. How is Ukraine now going about that?
Well, I think, Carl, the scale of the challenge facing Ukraine right now can't really be overstated. And I think what struck me when we were filming that report is that that was just a snapshot of what the country is facing, be it among soldiers, civilians, men, women. The country will have to adapt. The healthcare system, the infrastructure, society. And before the war, it was essentially the vast majority of people facing amputations were an older section of society, perhaps using a wheelchair. But this is facing so many young people, as you saw there in that report. And the way that Russia is going about prosecuting this war, that won't change anytime soon either, because heavy mining going on, that ordinance is going to last decades according to demining experts that I've been speaking to. It's now the most mined country on the planet. So when you look at these young people like Oleg, for example, they've got their whole life ahead of them. And he said to me, you know, I've got a young daughter, I want to provide for my family, I want to walk her to school, I want to hold her hand. And so, of course, medical devices like these prosthetics are absolutely life-changing for him. Other people say that, you know, they want to be able to go and serve on the front line once again, even if they've gone through this. but it's not always possible. These are very complex injuries, particularly the ones that we're seeing in Ukraine. So they can use these medical devices, which also require a high level of physical therapy, something that Ukraine doesn't necessarily have the experience with right now. And so that's where people like Mike Corcoran in the US come in. He's worked with many US veterans. He can go over to Ukraine. He's training people how to go about that physical therapy and also trying to build capacity in terms of opening clinics. Right now he's in Kiev and he wants to go about opening somewhere where they make these medical devices, using people who are also using these prosthetic limbs to do so, and then have that training as well. And he says that the workshop, he told me, he wants it to be glass, to be transparent, so people can look through it. They can see that the people making these medical devices perhaps also using them as well, so that people can start to understand and society can start to understand that even after a life-changing injury, life can go on as well. But of course for Ukraine, as it continues in the grip of this grinding war, the challenge is immense.
So many people there affected, as we saw in that piece. Helen Humphrey, thank you very much for your report.